Well, good afternoon. No, it's evening. Good evening, everybody. I'm Shannon Lee, Executive Director of Relay, and we are having our next live stream. I think this is our third live stream, technically. And in 2021, we're actually going to be doing this every other month. And we thought it would be super cool to take a theme and present that when we do these live streams. Now, because we're all working from home, and I'm in the live stream studio, aka home. Um, you're going to hear some noise. So, cameo appearance by Sammy and Gunner. Those are our Shih Tzus who are litter mates, and they have decided right now, when the live stream starts, that it's time to have a little bit of a little argument about some things. So I apologize for that if that's annoying, but what can you do? So we thought it would be interesting to talk about service, and I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a background. So at Relay, we have 4 key values: service, love, action, passion. It's an acronym that spells SLAP. It's actually how we named our podcast, the Slapcast. So shameless plug, if you haven't checked out our podcast, make sure you find us everywhere podcasts are published. You can find us, it's just search Relay Slapcast, just like it sounds, Slapcast. And we have an episode that drops every other week. And those episodes range anywhere from like 20 minutes to 45 minutes. I think our longest is an hour, but most of them are right there in that 20 to 30-minute range. So we talk about all things leadership. We have a lot of fun. This isn't stuffy leadership topics. We might take some tried and true topics, but we always put an interesting and fun spin on them. So I want to welcome all of you. And because of those 4 values, we thought, why don't we focus on one of those every quarter? And we thought, okay, well, let's take that to the live stream in January. And here we are. Not a super involved story, but it is what it is. So when we think about serving, you can kind of lump in there, I guess, volunteering, helping others, all the way to helping organizations. It could be one-off service. And what I mean by one-off service would be, let's say you volunteer for a marathon and you stand at a certain station and you hand out water to runners or something like that. So a one-off service opportunity, all the way to really extensive service opportunities like serving on a board or joining, even more than that would be joining a volunteer staff of a nonprofit or a church. And so serving others can take form of little things that you do day in and day out for your neighbor. And it can go all the way to really demonstrative things that include staff, like a non-paid staff volunteer role. That's not to say that the latter is more important or better, but rather it's probably more time consuming. It's more involved. And so when we talk about serving, we're kind of putting all of that into one ball of wax, as they say. So a lot of what we talked about leading up to tonight was, how do we serve in a way where we don't get burnout? And how do we serve in a way that we don't feel like or don't become a doormat? I feel like the doormat piece could relate more, not always, but could relate more to personal service, neighborly service. And then the burnout piece could relate to both neighborly service and all the way to, broad service like board service, volunteering for nonprofits, those kinds of things. And the reason why I find this topic interesting is because I think that a lot of people just serve without thinking about it. And then others don't serve for the same reason. They're not thinking about it. And so what I'd like to do tonight is really kind of make this more of an intentional part of what we do. And I'm hoping that some of the misconceptions about service, that it makes you a doormat and that potentially you could, burn out or whatever, and ways to avoid that. I want to bring those up and talk about those things because I think that for people who are scared to serve and volunteer and give of their time freely, especially if you're really busy, there's a fear around that there's not going to be enough left for you. And so I want to address that, but I also want to address the other end, which is there are a lot of you out there who are serving in tremendous ways. And deep down, there might be some resentments or some anger or this feeling that, well, if I don't do it, nobody will. And when that happens, that ends up becoming an unsustainable, if you will, or non-sustainable environment. And so we are going to break that down. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you post any comments, questions. I don't have all the answers. I can tell you that much. I don't even have half of them. But I am going to tell you that I'm willing to share my opinions and input on any questions that you might share tonight. And if not, then I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep talking about this concept. So one of the key misconceptions I think that there is around service is that, man, if it doesn't really, really hurt, if there's not some huge sacrifice involved, that it's not really service. If I'm not, brooding over the difficulty, if I'm not playing the martyr and saying how much that I did, or if I don't have an opportunity to do that maybe I haven't really served. And so where this idea kind of sparked in my mind was from my past. There was a time in my life where I really thought that to truly serve, I had to give my all to others and had to sacrifice everything. And I mean sacrifice money, sacrifice sleep, sacrifice personal satisfaction, all of those kinds of things. And hear me, I don't think that service means there is no sacrifice. Any time you exchange your time for free, you're sacrificing something. There's an opportunity cost there. And I'm not trying to break this down to dollars and cents, but what I mean is, whenever you say yes to volunteering, you're essentially saying no to something else. And that no could be to work, that no could be to time with friends, family, you name it. And so there's an opportunity cost every time that we serve, and thereby a sacrifice, even if it's minimal. But how do we know when we're serving to the point that our sacrifice, our serving until it hurts, is our motivation rather than serving to benefit others? And so I did a little bit of digging, not a lot of deep research here, but I looked up the definition of the word sacrifice. And I want to read to you one of the definitions that really stood out to me here. And it says to give up something important or valued. And remember what I said, I was talking about giving up time with family, giving up time at work. It could mean giving up the ability to make money on something, right? So something important or valued for the sake of other considerations. So the other person. So the focus is I'm giving something up, but why? For the sake of other considerations. When we get into martyrdom, martyr mode, our focus is not really our giving up of something important might remain the same, but our focus begins to turn into self. Either, kind of like this, oh, look what I've done. It's so hard. And look at me. And this is such a challenge, all the way to, they couldn't do this without me. And I think when we cross over into that realm, we're losing the true spirit of service, of really giving up one thing so that our focus can be on the consideration of others. I don't see anywhere in the definition where that giving up of something means that it's a detriment to myself. I don't see that in that definition. I'm open to your input and your thoughts on that, but I don't see a detriment to self in there. So giving until it hurts, giving to where you're up at 2:00 in the morning, for weeks on end, I don't believe that's required. I don't think that that's a bad thing, but it should be something we choose, not something that we believe is a have to, because otherwise, who else is going to do it? martyrdom. The intention and the motivation is a little different here. So this detriment of self connotation, the reason why it's a problem for me, and this is again my opinion, Relay is a servant leadership organization. And traditional leadership, just by comparison, and this is a broad generalization here, traditional leadership by comparison kind of views the world as a zero-sum game. And that there are winners and losers. And if someone is winning, someone must be losing. It's black and white. True servant leaders don't view the world that way. They don't view the world, their work, their service as a zero-sum game. In other words, I can serve at the consideration of others, and I can do so without detriment or damage to myself. I can do both. I can do good for others, I can do good for an organization, and take care of my own needs. I don't have to choose between what I used to think were two mutually exclusive ideas. And I did used to think that. I used to think that, well, if I'm not hurting, if this isn't really hurting me, if I'm not experiencing some kind of detriment to self, then am I really serving? And the question and the answer to that question for me was always like, well, no, I'm not. But I don't believe that anymore. And so this is one of the ways that I believe we get burned out in serving. And I believe if we switch our mindset around this, and instead of saying, well, I must serve no matter what it costs, instead say, how can I serve? How can I give with the consideration of others and at the same time take care of myself? And get our brain working on that solution. I don't believe we must automatically lose to serve others. Listen, folks, I don't believe that's sustainable. It's not sustainable. We will burn out doing that. Now, a word of caution to leaders who, especially in nonprofits, churches, which are nonprofits, but just calling out these specific organizations, because having volunteered in nonprofits myself as well as churches, I can tell you this. It is really easy to let people to continue to give of their time and talents until it hurts because, well, I don't have to worry about that. As a servant leader, I want to challenge you to keep your eye on the kind of service that other people are giving in your nonprofit, at your churches, even if there's a service component in your for-profit company. Keep an eye on what's going on because you want to make sure that it is sustainable. And you do that by ensuring that people know that they can choose. Create this culture. You can choose to serve and take care of yourself and make sure that your needs are met. So I think that's one way we can make sure that we aren't getting burned out on serving. Okay, so one of the other misconceptions, and this one might seem a little strange. This one might seem like it's not a real thing, but I want to bring it up because it was real for me. And so I thought if it's true for me, it's got to be true for at least another person. And that is that maybe you're out there and you've stopped serving because service has become boring to you. Or another way to put that would be the service that you're doing has become a little meaningless to you. It's become rote and you're a little bored. And I get that. I mean, I feel, we can feel that way about our jobs. We can feel that way in, friendships, relations, anything can become boring. And I think that's actually the point that I want to make, that we don't need to be entertained all the time. Pretty much anything can become boring from time to time, including service to others. When we're doing something, even in the consideration of others, is it possible that in that consideration, we have grown kind of weary in what we're doing? Possibly. But I don't think that means that there's no meaning. So boredom does not equal a lack of meaning. But if that's you, if you find yourself in that place and you're trying to figure that out, here's what I would encourage you to consider. Maybe it's not that you're bored with the cause or the service in general, but maybe you're ready for a new challenge. Maybe you want to serve, let's use a nonprofit for an example, just generic nonprofit. Maybe you're ready to serve at a level that requires more of you, more of your thinking power, let's say. I remember several years ago, a relay volunteer came to me. We had a regular check-in meeting, and he didn't say he was bored, but what he said was, Shannon, I've been volunteering for this organization for years. I really love the cause. I really love what we're doing, the mission, but I just feel like I'm ready to do something more. And this person was involved in committees. They were involved in volunteering for one-off events, as I mentioned earlier, like our leadership events. The next step for this person was probably board service at that particular time. And so while I don't have, as the executive director, I don't bring people onto the board, I mentioned it to him and said, if you're interested, why don't I introduce you to the board president and you can have a conversation and see if this is something that you'd like to be considered for, and then you can go through the vetting process. And he sits on our board today. And he still serves on committees, and he actually helps us with our strategic planning. So he volunteers even more. There are people at organizations who the boredom is actually a sign that there's more for you at that organization. So don't misconstrue that boredom to think that you're done. It might mean that you're ready to do more. And let me explain something here, just from a nonprofit perspective. The value that committee members and board members bring to nonprofits when they help create programs and they utilize thought leadership that creates efficiencies, that solves problems, that is the same as money in the bank. If I have a volunteer who is helping me solve a problem that was costing me $20,000 a year, and they've helped me streamline a process that now costs me $10,000 a year, that's the same as someone writing a $10,000 check, not me, but the organization. And so we don't want to underestimate that when people are feeling bored, when you are feeling bored in your service, it might be that you're ready to take on a greater challenge and to serve more. Always remembering that we don't want to do this to detriment to self. We want to make sure that it's coming from a place that yes, we might just say no to something else, as I said earlier in that definition, right? We might have to give up something in order to take consideration for something else. But that exchange is being made consciously and in a way that says, hey, I want to give more. I want to help solve problems. And usually committee members and board members are the ones that are helping to solve those problems. Okay, so, let me backtrack. And how that helps us not to be burnout or not to get burnout, I can think of lots of ways that I get burnout doing things. And one of the ways is if I continually do something that is boring to me. Believe it or not, if I continually do something that's even easy to me, it can eventually lead to burnout. People think of burnout as I'm working too much. Working too much is a result of burnout. And that's not what tonight's live stream is about. It's not about burnout. But I think one of the ways we can avoid burnout in our service is to make sure that when we're feeling that sense of boredom, that we first ask, am I ready to do more here? And then see where that takes us. The next one is interesting because I did a little bit of research on this, and I found out about this many, many years ago with a conference that I went to in, gosh, where was that? That was in Michigan. And I learned about this concept of when helping hurts. And this is going to be kind of a pause from the doormat conversation and the making sure we don't get, burned out conversation, but it's sort of like a cautionary place in the live stream right now. And that is this. It's the belief that all serving is helpful. And the reason why that's a caution is because I don't think all serving is helpful. I don't think all serving is helpful. And so some ways that we can make sure that serving is helpful is we can ask ourselves some questions. So first of all, is what I'm doing performative? And what I mean by performative is, am I doing this out of self-promotion? Am I doing this so others can see how loving and caring I am? And this is a really fine line here. And I'm going to use social media just because I think it's I think we can all envision this. I'm not quite sure how to explain this other than to say this. I think there's a difference between doing something good in the world and letting the world know on social media to draw attention to a cause versus drawing attention to what I did. Now, I'm not passing judgment on any organizations or individuals who do that. What I'm saying is if you want to avoid the performative nature of volunteering, of service, then really ask yourself before you put it out there for the world to see on social media, what is my motivation for putting this out here? Do I want accolades? Do I want people to know that I've done something amazing? Or am I putting this out there because I'm really, truly, deeply trying to highlight this cause and the work that they are doing versus the work that I am doing? I'm going to have to take a pause right now. I'm not going anywhere, but our guest stars tonight, Sammy and Gunner, the Shih Tzus. Gunner has decided to chew on my AirPod case, and I don't want him to do anything bad to it. Plus, it's hooked up to a cord, which he has basically destroyed. So let's get that out of his hands. This is what happens when you're in a live stream. This is like real life stuff here. I know Jason's here in the studio with me. Well, at a distance. Here, I'll show you all. I don't know if you can see that. Nope, you can't. There are teeth marks in the case. So let's just put it that way. Okay, folks. So is this performative? The next question I would ask, this one's a toughie. Is this controlling? And this is going to apply a little bit more to those smaller acts of service, like within our friend and family group, maybe even the neighborly acts of service that we conduct. But it could also relate to service in a nonprofit in the community. And so, again, motivation is key here. Motivation is key. And what I mean by that is sometimes my service comes from a place of me wanting things done in a certain way. Now, there's nothing wrong with having, being skilled at something and doing something a certain way. But if my service is because, well, it has to be done this way because it's the only right way, then I think that might be coming more from, I'm motivated to do this because I'm uncomfortable with the way that you're doing it. So I'm going to do it my way. And then I'm going to wrap that and call it volunteerism or service. There's a saying that I once heard, and that is that helping is the sunny side of control. Now, every time you help, it doesn't mean you're trying to be controlling. But the key learning here is really think about what is your motivation for helping? Are you helping so that you can get it done your way? Is it focused on doing the service? Is it really motivated subconsciously from a need to control an outcome? right? I'm going to help you. And here's how you know if that's you, that needing an outcome. And I hear it all the time. Well, I did this and nobody thanked me. Saying thank you is good manners. Let's just boil down appreciation to what it is. Basic appreciation is good manners. What you're really saying, whether you like it or not, is when you do something and you need recognition for it, is you did it for the recognition. You didn't do it for the consideration of others. And that is selfishly motivated. That comes from a controlling place. It's okay if you start there, but just pause and say to yourself, can I find a way to do this? To give of my time, to give of my talents, to give up this thing over here. Can I do it without caring what the outcome is? Without care, can I do it and not care what people think, if they give me thanks, if they appreciate it or whatever? Now, I think good things should be appreciated. I think when you give of your time, someone should say thank you and recognize you for sure. But are you motivated from that as a need? That is not sustainable because not everybody is going to meet that unspoken expectation for you. The other question, and this one comes more from the research, is this service placing me in a position of superiority? So there are authors, Steve Corbett and Brian Fikkert, who wrote a best-selling book, and I mentioned it. I didn't mention the title specifically, but I did say it. It's called When Helping Hurts: How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself. I love that call out to others and self. It's this idea, again, back to where we started, which is that when we give to the detriment of self, we're not helping anyone. The book, of course, goes into great detail, but it talks about how some helping inadvertently, most of the time, I believe, puts the helper, the one giving the service, in a position of superiority. And it affirms our sense of superiority. And so that sense of superiority is usually directed at certain people groups who maybe don't have what you have, who maybe you are genuinely motivated and your intention is to help others who have less than you. But the unintended consequence and impact of that is that what's being communicated is that what I have is better than what you have. The life that I live is superior to the life that you live. So come up to my level and I'm going to help you get there. And when you think about it from that perspective, it's kind of condescending and very superior acting. And so what this reminds me of is Jessica Jackley. She no longer works for Kiva, but she's a co-founder of Kiva, and Kiva creates micro loans all over the world now. They're a nonprofit and they make micro loans. So it could be a $25 loan, a $75, $100 loan. And where they started doing this was in third world countries where a $100 loan is like gold, right? And these are entrepreneurs who want to start a really small business, and this little micro loan can help them get started. How is this related to what I'm talking about? She was so motivated to create this because she realized this sense of unintended superiority that was created by just giving people money. Now, nonprofits rely on charitable giving, and I think we should do those kinds of things. But when it came to individuals, she said, what if, and I heard her, she was speaking at an event, and this is an event I went to a couple years ago. What she was explaining was, when we give gifts to individuals, it's almost like we are in a position of superiority. I am the lender, you are not the lender, I am the giver, you are the recipient. You're the recipient of my charity, yay me, and I'm helping hopeless you. And I'm exaggerating here, but she thought, what if instead we could honor and respect people by entering into a business arrangement with them an actual legal agreement where both parties agree, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. And it is mutually beneficial. And so Kiva was born, and now these microloans are available virtually all over the world. And it came out of this idea. And so I think that when we think about service, one of the key things we could do, and maybe I should have started here tonight, is really think about our intention. Are we doing it in a performative way where we're wanting accolades? We're even unintentionally, we're getting, atta girl, Shannon, you did a great job volunteering, versus highlighting the cause. Are we doing it in a way that tries to control others, whether it's because we're uncomfortable with something and so we want it done our way, or maybe it's motivated by a need for recognition? And one of the ways we can avoid that is just say, am I willing to do this regardless of response or gratitude? And if we can say, yeah, I'm willing to do this regardless, then do it. Absolutely do it. And then finally, is our service from a place of superiority? I think these are good checks and balances for service that we can ask ourselves. So I don't see any comments coming in or any questions coming in. I'm going to invite Jason just for a brief moment. And then what I'm going to do is really what I'd like to do, Jason, I'm going to bring you into the stream here. Welcome.
Hey.
Jason is our community engagement manager. And how I want to bring this home, Jason, is I want to talk about so I've talked about ways that we can avoid the burnout and kind of like the anti-examples, right? So how I want to end this is some ideas for helping and serving from a more productive place. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these. So I'm going to go through these and kind of there's no preparation, by the way. So this is totally off the cuff. I didn't even send this to Jason. He's that good, folks.
We'll see.
So the first one is, and this is more of an internal thing, Jason. This is what I want to talk about is reducing guilt. I don't think guilt is useful. And what I'm referring to here is like serving out of a place of guilt versus serving from a place of a more useful emotion like compassion and love. So that's really where I think we should start, is really thinking about what am I passionate about? What do I love? What kind of, as they say, makes my heart beat, versus the guilt motivation is, well, if I don't do this, then people are going to think bad of me, or this is what good people do. You have any thoughts on that? Stories, clips?
I think the trap that we can fall in as leaders when we think about guilt is we get this idea that there's a balance or a debt that we will pay by good work. But the challenge is, if we're talking about guilt, it's kind of like a bottomless pit. We'll chase and look for ways to satisfy whatever we think will, like, I won't feel guilty about myself if I do enough good. And I think that doing good or serving can certainly help to shift our thinking. I think sometimes that can give opportunities to kind of refresh or approach things differently. But inherently beginning with this idea that I am bad and so therefore I must do good to equal out this balance, I think it's a real challenge because we're going to be constantly living in reaction when guilt is driving.
Ooh, I like that point. That it's
rather
like
than being proactive, we're reacting.
Yeah. Like reacting versus choosing. I didn't think about that. I also love what you said about it's like we're paying a debt.
Yeah.
That seems really difficult and sad almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned this in the last one, but I think it's helpful along those lines to just evaluate your intentions. That's the second one. Asking those questions. So we don't really need to discuss that further unless there's something that came up for you when I was talking about that, Jason, and, asking the good questions around your intentions. Am I being performative? Am I is this help actually helping, or am I really here just in a place of superiority and I didn't realize? I don't know if anything came up for you around that, but that's more of just a reminder to everybody that we really want to look at our intentions. And this might sound like a lot of work around service, but I think nonprofits would be better served by people who are thinking more deeply about these things. I think we would have more effective service for sure.
Yeah. And the key with that is to actually do it.
Yeah.
Actually check your intentions. We're kind of fearful of that many times because we're afraid that we'll be like, oh, how could I do something so good with the wrong intentions? But sometimes it's going to be an indicator that there's unhealth in another area. There's a reason that we're doing things with the wrong intentions. The other thing that's important, I would say, too, is the value of network, community, relationship, whatever you would call it. But who are the people that would call you on your crap if you're full of it? Who are the people do you have people that would know? And I think that is just something you can't really put a price tag on, is to have some of those people around you that when they say that they see something, motives seem off. I don't think that for most of us, it's just like all at once, motives are off. I think it can be a shift over time, but do we have those people around us that we kind of allow to call that out and know that they have good intentions for us as well? So,
and always remember that intention, we've talked about this a lot as a staff, and it's been top of mind in the anti-racism space, at least for me, and that is understanding intention, that intention is not more important than impact. And so when we say be intentional, it is to be thinking about the impact of our action, because if I bet you we could both think of folks that they volunteer and the minute they're not consulted on something, they are deeply hurt, which tells me that their service is coming from a place of, they're getting, they're needing some kind of affirmation from that, which might be coming from a place that they didn't intend, and they're probably not aware. And so that's why we got to bring it top of mind. The other one is, I think it's a really good idea to match your values around giving. So I threw giving in here, and I mean financially, because it is a way to serve nonprofits. And don't worry, I'm not going to do a commercial asking people to give to Relay. I mean, we would cash that check, don't get me wrong. But there is, that's not what this is about. I think about, like, what kind of values you want an organization to have before you give to that organization. It's not just about a cause, but what are their values? And what I'm driving out here is, and I'm going to use us as an example, and then let you know that I think most organizations do this. So at Relay, we view anyone who gives a moment of time, who gives an ounce of their talent, their thought leadership, or $1. All of those people are donors to us, and they keep the wheels moving. They're partners in a vision, and we are helping them accomplish their goals on the platform of what we do. And we're continually trying to find ways to help people to do that. And giving financially is just one way. In fact, if I would think about, most of our donors, many of them might be writing a check, but they're also giving in other ways. Most donors are giving in more than one way, whether it's time or talent, in addition to financially. And so if you're not sure what the organization's values are around giving, my suggestion is just to ask them and see what they say. An organization that has thought about this should be able to rattle that off without second guess. Their leaders should be able to let you know that. And the reason why I believe values are so important is because in some organizations that are really driven up, like every nonprofit in church, nonprofit doesn't mean there's no money. It's not like, imaginary beings come in and pay the electric bill. And everybody knows that. But I do think that there's this weird idea that we don't want to really talk about money because that seems kind of like forbidden. And what's interesting is in other cultures, they believe that, and there's a specific culture, and I wish I had thought about this earlier because I would have looked it up to remind myself. I can't think of it right now, but in other cultures, it's not considered rude. Like if I saw Jason at a coffee shop, so Jason, how's your family doing? How much money are you making this year? Are you in much debt? I mean, we wouldn't do that. Most people in America wouldn't do that. And the reason for that is because so many of us worship money and we're afraid what's going to happen if we don't have it. And so we avoid the conversation. In many other cultures, though, money is not that taboo subject. They actually do greet people and say, so how are you doing this year? Are you making more money? Are you going to pay your bills? How's your debt going? Are you paying that down? It's as common as asking, how are your children? Because in many other cultures, money is not worshiped like it is in our culture. And I know that's a broad generalization. But in nonprofit work, and especially in fundraising, we're constantly talking to donors about giving financially and otherwise. And so we have to be able to get over this fear around giving. And one of the ways we can do that is by discussing our values around giving. Anything you want to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I would just say that it's important to realize too that when you're serving and leading, giving externally outside of your own world kind of sets you free from this scarcity mindset that can happen when we're fatigued. When we're challenged, maybe we're in a stressful season in our organization, little by little, the world begins to shrink on us into our own little space. And we just kind of compile our own needs, and it just becomes just this massive undertaking. Giving, whether it's time or money or talent or resources, whatever it is, allows us once again to see a bigger picture, to realize we're not the only leader doing work that we're passionate about. And in some ways, it's the simple analogy is maybe at some point you've been to a conference or some type of offsite setting and you experience something so impactful. And it was this experience of the collective having this aha moment together or resolving this thing together. And then you come back to work or home with this refreshed perspective, right? Why do organizations spend so much time on that? I think there's something significant in seeing your part in the greater collective. And I think giving is a way to definitively say this is a priority for me. And so it kind of can relieve us from that scarcity mindset and help us to see things in a more abundant light. Even if we're not personally experiencing that in our own organization, we see values and resources aligning and we're reminded, oh yeah, it's done with people. And it's done with people that have a passion for things that are important to them. And I'm one of those people too. So yeah, I think it can be freeing for us as leaders.
Your comment on prioritization is actually a great segue into something else I wanted to talk about with giving. And I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not. It might be with some groups of people. And that is this: I'm a fan of choosing like your top three. Now, don't take this as, oh, you can't give to 4 or you can't give to 5 or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. And when I say give, remember, I mean time, abilities, and money. All of the above. I think all of them, the most effective way to give to organizations, whether it be from your paycheck, from your time, or your skills, is to pick a top 3. And here's why I think that. If you have, let's say you have, and we'll use money because that's the easiest way to define it. Let's say you have $300 a month that's available to you for charitable giving. And you decide, you know what, I want to help as many organizations as possible. I'm going to give, 30 organizations a month, $10. I'm going to give them each $10 a month, right? 30 different organizations. And heck, we have a membership program that I think it starts at $18. So there is no gift that is too small. So this is not a criticism of small gifts. Some people can only afford a $10 gift. But if you can afford 300, 3 organizations at $100 each, that is a much bigger impact to their cash flow, to their monthly need. And this is one of those hard truths that I think a lot of organizations don't want to say, because again, we don't want to talk about money. We don't want to offend people in our conversation about money, but truly it's the avoidance of the conversation it tells me that we're almost worshiping what, like, it's like, ooh, it's taboo. It's not taboo. It should not be taboo. Well, now you get to do what you want with your money. It's none of my business, but I'm recommending to other people that if you have a certain amount to give, that you pick a top 3. Same thing with your time. If you have, 3 hours a month to give, really that's not a ton of time. The less time you have, the fewer organizations you should give it to, because you can have a bigger impact by giving more of your time to 1, 2, or 3 organizations than giving just a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there, a little bit of time there. The other reason I think this is important is because I have yet to meet a financial donor who doesn't also care about what's going on in the organization. So far, I've yet to meet a donor that says, here's my money, I don't want to know what's going on. Now, they might care about different things. I have donors that they don't even want to be on our email list. But you know what they want? They want to know what our financial standing is every quarter. Okay, I can provide that data. Then I have other donors that, they love getting my weekly updates, and that's good. That makes them feel tied in. And then other ones, other things. But the point is that it's going to be really hard if you're spreading out your giving over 10, 12 organizations to be tied into the point where you can see what's happening with your financial gift and really being assured that it's making an impact, no matter how big or small that gift is, because it's just more difficult to be involved time-wise with the organizations that you're contributing to financially. So again, I know it might be an unpopular opinion, but I really believe that this top 3, and this is what I urge our individual donors, that when I ask people to become a Relay donor and I have that one-on-one conversation, I say, what I'm asking you is for Relay to be in your top 3. That's what I'm asking you right now. And there's certain people that are ready for that conversation, and other people aren't ready for the top 3 conversation. They just want to start giving, you're one of 10 for them. That's fine. That is fine. But when people grow in their giving and their philanthropy, if you will, their ability to contribute financially, there's times when it's time to ask people to really hone in and to make a bigger commitment. And sometimes what that means is reducing the number of folks that they give to, or thinking about directing a larger amount to specific recipients. And so I think that can make a bigger impact. And a lot of corporations are doing this, by the way, with their corporate giving. They are reducing the number of causes that they give to, but not the amount of money that they're giving. So instead of giving to 10 causes every year, and they have, let's say, $1 million to give, and they're giving away $100,000 to each, instead they're focusing on 4. And this is simple math, just because I don't do fractions right, off the cuff. But instead they're saying we've got 4 main causes, and each cause is going to get upwards of $250,000 a piece. That $250,000 is a much bigger impact on that organization than the 100. They're grateful for both and can use both, but it's a much bigger impact. And more corporations are moving along this line because it's been proven that it has a bigger impact for those nonprofits. And so I've been urging individuals to adopt that same thought process. Anything you want to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to some of the very things that are creating leader fatigue as we're serving, is that sometimes we're doing too many things at this level rather than getting focused on a few big things. He's a leadership guru and pastor out of Atlanta, Andy Stanley. He says it like this, which is pretty provocative, but I think it really, if we give it a minute to sink in, it makes a lot of sense. Do for one what you wish you could do for everybody. That's really not the choice any one of us want to find ourselves in, but the challenge, and I think the intent of a statement like that, is just finding a way to be focused in to where you can have significant impact, where with the one that this is what I can pour into. And I think a lot of times as leaders, when we get tired or we're feeling kind of walk all over us serving, we might find ourselves the same principle with giving in our own activities and in our leadership as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Well, we're really at the end of the live stream right now. So just to summarize tonight, we talked about ways that we can avoid burnout with service. We talked about things that we can do to make service more productive for us. So if you joined in at the end, we didn't talk about money all night. We just talked about money the last 10 minutes. So go back and watch the replay. But I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Jason, thanks for being here tonight. And we'll see you. We're going to do this every other month, right, Jason? So we'll be back in March.
Yeah, we'll be on
right?
live stream every other month. Next month, we'll actually have another free workshop, but they'll have to register. You'll have to register through Zoom. And it's all around how we navigate fear as leaders. So there's ways that fear can hurt us and ways that it actually can help us. We'll be talking about that. So keep an eye out for that. And then I'll go ahead and do my shameless plug community engagement manager role here. A couple other things to keep on the radar. The first would be that we have just rolled out on our website diversity, equity, and inclusion training, along with soon to be released anti-racism training as well. So if that's something you've considered, Relay would love to partner with you on that. Head to our website, relayleadership.com. All kinds of exciting stuff coming to you this year. But that's my infomercial plug, and I'll hand it back over to you, Shannon.
I'm glad that you thought of that, because that's something I should have thought of. So I put the Navigating Fear free workshop link in the comments. Great. And FYI, Jason is facilitating that. I've seen the notes on it. I've seen his talking points. It's going to be phenomenal. You're going to learn a little bit about his journey, as they say. And it's going to be a great workshop. It's on what, February 23rd? February 23rd.
There's different time options. There's a morning one and then like a lunch hour one. So whichever one works for you. Or both. If you want to go to both, we could totally knock out fear. If you have two things you're afraid of, do both of them.
Go bananas. Yeah. So have coffee with Jason or lunch or both. So make sure you join us there. Hit us up at info@relayleadership.org. I'll put that in the comments as well. info@relayleadership.org. That's how you can reach out to us with any questions, including if you have any interest in DEI and anti-racism workshops, which, as Jason mentioned, are just now getting out there, and it is on our website as well. So thanks for joining us tonight, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you. Thanks.